Today I will bring you one of my dear friends. She said, I just help people connect to their hearts. Dr. Lalitaa.
That just because you're a therapist, you're a psychologist, you work with people, you have your life figured out. We are also human beings, and this comes up. But I'm not a therapist in real life. If something doesn't feel right for you, don't just go along with it just for the sake of it.
Have you ever done that? Like you got a couple and you said, you guys are toast.
I wonder how many comments you'll get for saying that. We're worried about what the other person's going to think. Do we struggle because we think that our emotions are too big, we're too much? What are people going to think about us? All these things can just limit us and just hold us back from showing up as we want to show up and be loved in the way that we want to be loved. Just understand your patterns of behavior, because that's what ultimately we're here to do, is understand ourselves, to grow, to develop. And if that's okay, but it's you that needs to accept that.
Welcome back. My guest today is Dr. Lalitaa. I asked Lalitaa, how do I introduce you? And she said, well, people always talk about those ego-based titles, PhD in this, therapist in that, psychologist in this. She said, I just help people connect to their hearts. I think that's a very, very nice and sufficient introduction, if you ask me. So today I will bring you one of my dear friends, someone who you should listen to my conversation with on her podcast, because it was actually quite deep, Jedi Master level in many ways. And I can talk to Lalitaa about anything. It's always Jedi Master level, but today we're going to talk about love and romance. And I want to start, first of all, thank you for being here.
I'm really grateful and I'm honored, and I'm glad we got to do it in real life and not on Zoom, because it is all about connection and being in person.
You kept insisting on this. Every time I said, let's just jump on a Zoom, you were like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's I appreciate that. I mean, sometimes I have to say, I get really just exhausted by the number of things that happen in my life.
No, I appreciate that.
And I really wanted us to have this conversation, and so I was like, let's just do it.
I was I'm ready
we're
to wait.
Be fine. But there you go. I want to start with something that puzzled me yesterday. Can I do that?
Yeah, no, go for it.
So we can talk about anything, but I want to start from love and romance.
Yeah.
Okay. A couple of days ago, I posted a post from Sarah Dawn Moore, who was a guest on this podcast, who spoke about love and romance. And she said, basically she said, the number one emotional need for men in a relationship is respect.
Yeah.
The number one emotional need for women in a relationship is love. And she said, if you want to be given love, you might as well try to give your partner respect. Anything sounds awfully wrong with that.
So first of all, my brain goes into, what does love mean and what does respect mean? And how do we understand what love and respect is? Because we're saying men need respect, but what does respect mean? And we're saying that women need love, but what does love mean? So I'm confused by what the term is.
Interesting. I mean, let me talk as a man and you talk as a woman.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing that I need in my relationships is, for example, when I have a life that is hyper complicated with 1.5 million people, that require my time, and travel that is constant, and whatever. And then I attempt, if I have a woman in my life, to go out of my way and do something that is, lovely for the two of us. While at the end of, that experience, I'm a bit tired, okay? I'd expect my woman to look at me and say, I recognize how much you're going through. And I feel that this was you putting in a lot of effort. And so I appreciate that what you've done. And I also respect how much you're going, how much challenges you've gone through to do that, right? I wouldn't respond the same way to a cuddle or a flower or a rose or
Yeah.
you're so sweet. None of that. As a man,
Yeah.
I'd like to be recognized for what I have contributed and achieved and respected for my views and opinions. And that really matters to me in my relationships.
See, I think, again, the number of people I've spoken to and I've worked with and I've understood their love language or understood what's important to them, I can't put people into a box of men and women and this is what men and because everyone's
Feminine and
journey.
masculine, no?
Yeah, well, okay, if we're looking at it from feminine and masculine, then yeah, I can see that. But I also feel that people go through things and that then interrupts their love language, that then allows them to show up in a very different way because of what they may have experienced, to then understanding what they're wanting in that relationship. And sometimes people, they're not honest with themselves about what they're looking for. So they might be so fearful about upsetting the other person that they for them, it's like they'll dismiss not being seen, because for them, it's like, no, I need to keep them in my life and I need to make sure that I'm doing enough for them so that they stay here. So their need might be that they want to be seen. But in that moment, they're like, no, I can't have that because I don't want them to leave because of trauma that may have happened or other things that have gone on in their lives where maybe they have been through abandonment or rejection.
So I think that's exactly what I was puzzled about. So once again, I found the message of, look, this is a need for your partner, give it to them, to be a very reasonable message. Okay, and here is the emotional roller coaster I went through. My therapy session with you. I posted that,
Yeah.
and then there was a comment. I should probably read it so that I'm not, making it up. It said, most women have to compromise a lot of their self-love and self-value to preserve relationships that are draining. Okay?
Okay.
This is the reality, and now women should be the one respecting a man more when he hardly lifts a finger at home and makes her life harder on daily basis. Experience of years for hundreds of, I don't know what that means. The reason we opt out of marriage and children is not because we respect them less. It's because men bring in less than bare minimum and expect women to do the majority of the mental, emotional, and household load, aside of holding up a career and do most of the child raising and so on. This is a very interesting comment to me.
Yeah, it really is.
Because I have to say, my very first emotional response was like, you're hurt. Right? You feel something so negative about men in general, and I can understand that.
Yeah.
My second response, and I say that with respect, is, oh, I thought it was women that were draining.
Yeah.
Okay, but then my third response was, why are we turning this into a war?
Yeah. Shouldn't it be about communicating and trying to understand the other person to see where they're at, what's important to them, and really trying to understand and navigate that, not thinking about what other people think is good in a relationship. It's trying to understand what's good for you in that relationship and how are you showing up for the other person, but vice versa. And if something isn't working, isn't it about having that space to talk to one another to see how are we going to move forward with this?
I mean, that's exactly the point. That's why I ask you to, I'm bringing it up with you, because it seems to me that our relationships in the world are breaking.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It seems to me that those relationships are breaking because we are so traumatized by our previous experiences. I mean, I say it openly. I mean, it's not a joke that most of the men I know, and my initial response was like, I thought women are the draining ones, right? And that's also not true.
Yeah, that's again, it's a condition, but it's something that you've learned or something that you've seen along the way that women are draining. So when you're entering a relationship, that belief system, it might be subconscious, but it's there in the back. So when, for example, you come home one day and you're at home and your partner might say, oh, you've left your shoes at the door. You're like, oh, this is why women are draining, because you've gone back to that belief system that is there, that's just there niggling away. But you also might have the belief that women are really caring or women are really nurturing. And then when you don't get that, instantly again, it's going against your belief system. So this is really trying to understand when you're entering a relationship, when things are coming up for you, you have to do the work as well. You have to understand what's going on within you and making sense. If someone's annoying you, if someone's creating anxiety because of something that they're doing, if someone's stressing you out, what's going on within you, and finding the right way to communicate that with the other person to see how you can come up with a solution. And it may not be what you want to hear, but at least you've been seen, you've been heard, you've been understood. And it might be that this is how we're going to move forward from this.
I agree with this 100%. I think the truth is, I'm no longer that person. I actually, there were moments in my life where I felt that way. But, as I started to really, really dig deeper and understand myself and understand my choices and understand the match in my previous relationships and understand the truth of what they brought versus what they took and so on and so forth, I don't believe that anymore. But here's the interesting thing. This comment got around 40 likes within half an hour. Okay?
And were the likes agreeing with
okay. So that idea of it's a war, men are awful, was 100%. It was actually probably one of the most liked comments in 1 hour I ever had on a post ever, right? And suddenly I realized that the thing about this whole mini series of love and romance, I assumed in my mind that I was doing this mini series where my listeners were interested to make things work, and this was just about the how. But it interestingly seems that no, that's not always the case. And I now reference back to my friends and I go like, yeah, that's actually not always the case. Very, very often, I think the relationship profile of feminine and masculine, whether that's men and women or whatever gender choices you have, that relationship is one of need that is filled with frustration. It's like I need the other in my life, whether for sex or for, to split the mortgage or whatever that is, but I really dislike having them around. That's a much deeper layer of issues than I thought, we should cover in this series at all. So you are at the receiving end of this. Where does all of that come from? What are the underlying traumas? If you have a higher list of what are the reasons why we come to this, and of course, hopefully, how can we change that mindset before we even talk about the techniques of how to work with one another to become better?
So if we think of where does it all begin, is it that when we enter relationships, are we taught what is it that we're looking for in this relationship? But also, are we taught that it's okay for you to go within yourself? So what I mean by that is if someone comes into therapy and they're looking for couple therapy, they might be thinking that there's something going on there. So, for example, they might come in and they say, we had an argument today. And I'll say, okay, what was the argument about? Let's go through this. And it's like, okay, he didn't pick up the pencil. He didn't pick up the toys. He didn't pick up this. So there's a frustration. And it's got nothing to do with the toys. It's got nothing to do with the pencil. It's something about not being seen, not being understood. And if one of them's busy, is she speaking out? Or if he's busy, is the communication there between what each other need, but also what is it that's going on for them so the other understands? Because sometimes we feel like they should know. They should know what's going on for me. They should understand this. Why should I have to tell them? They don't care about me. They don't love me if I have to explain what's going on for me. But if you're not explaining that, look, I've had a really long week, and you might be presenting as you're still got enough energy, that you're still going out with your friends the next day, and the other person might not feel seen, or they might feel like, well, you're doing that. But if you're not communicating that, hey, I'm feeling really upset that you're going out with your friends tomorrow, but you're not making time for me today, if this is the only day that we're going to see. So if I'm not explaining that to you, how will you know that I'm feeling this frustration? That frustration will build up. Then it gets to a point where he hasn't picked up the toys. And then I'm frustrated, and then I might just be showing him a aggressive sort of behavior where I'm slamming something and he's like, oh God, here she goes again. But that's because he may not know what's going on, but vice versa. He might also be like just banging the door on the way out. So where's the real communication there? What is it that's really going on? So you asked me the question, where does it all begin? And does it begin back from what we learn love is from our parents? What we learn love is through the attachments that we had growing up. So if we think of our attachments, if we grew up believing that our emotions are too big, for example, we might learn, don't share your emotions. Because if I share my emotions are not going to be accepted because they're too big. So I'm too much if I show up in this way. So we continue that way. We continue that way through life, and then we get into a relationship. And when we're in this relationship, we have that same belief in the back of our head. don't show your emotions because they're too big. They're going to leave you, or they're going to reject you. So in the background, we have, don't show your emotions, don't show your emotions, because people are going to reject. So we don't show up being our authentic self because we don't realize that this is our learned behaviors and our learned patterns that are showing up in our relationships.
So don't show your emotions is one. What other possibilities?
So that don't show your emotions because they might be too big. But also,
so that basically means that would lead us to a relationship, which I had experienced that, before, where my partner wouldn't say anything at all.
Yeah.
She would bottle things up, and she would, when I ask what's wrong, she would say nothing.
Yeah.
Everything's okay. So that's one example.
Yeah. But with that example, there's lots of layers. So it might be because they have a lack of awareness. They don't even know themselves because they're so disconnected from their own emotions because they've just been putting their emotions in a box in the back somewhere. So they might not be aware of these emotions. So they don't have that self-awareness. So they just know that they're going to shut down. So they've just shut down because that's been their way of coping in the past. So they've learned, just shut down. If something's too much, just shut down and disconnect from the person. So that might be another layer of them showing up in a certain way. But it's also if they have seen certain role models. So if they've seen mom and dad, for example, and they've seen mom and dad fighting, or they've seen mom and dad being very busy, mom being very busy, not really showing that affection to one another, have they also grown up that that's what love is? That's what it is. You smile there, you laugh. But is that what they've learned? So do we learn love the way that love is through our parents as well? And it's not blaming our parents at all. It's about understanding, where do we gain these beliefs? Why is it that when we enter a relationship, you're coming from your experiences, So your dad might have been very emotionally available. Someone else's dad may not have been emotionally available. So you're coming into this thinking, my partner shouldn't be emotionally unavailable. But then they are emotionally available, and it feels very uncomfortable because you're like, I'm not used to this. This feels uncomfortable. But that might be something that you want or something you need in a relationship, but you've never learned to sit with that because growing up, you didn't get that.
Is it necessary that we open up? I mean, after I said I had a relationship where she would bottle things up, I also realized I rarely ever speak anyway. So I, not when I have something that needs to be expressed, I express it very openly, and I first write down my notes very clearly so that my words are very kind and so on, and I express it very openly. But most of the time, I think 90% of things don't really matter, right? And I actually also think that sometimes things are so complicated that it's not worth the effort to try and explain everything. I'll just figure it out. It's fine. You know what I mean? When my life is, as it is, it's a blessing, but my life affects the lives of thousands of others people. And I make, several commitments every day that are extremely important for others and so on. And it's very complex to explain why I cannot do this half an hour earlier, or why is it stressing me, but I'm not able to remove it and so on. So I choose to say, you know what, just don't worry about it. We don't need to spend an hour and a half to go through this, especially knowing that, many relationships in my life, the answer will be eat more quinoa. Quinoa solves everything. And I hate quinoa, right? So the idea is maybe it's not worth the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But can you hear? That's you. You've made that choice. This isn't worth the time. But then your partner's over there and she's sensitive and she's picked up that, hang on a minute.
Yeah, you're
something's
not emotionally available
You're
to
not
me.
here. You're not here right now. What's going on? And you're saying, oh, nothing. But she's like, there is something going on, but he's not telling me. And you've made the decision on your side that, hey, look, my energy, I've got 1 to 10 in my energy today. And I've given here. Is it worth opening this door? No, I'm not going to open the door. But energy speaks. So you might be, I'm not going to open that door. Yeah, everything's fine. Everything's okay. But she's felt your energy. So she's feeling your energy and she knows something. And then that can also cause a sort of like a conflict or a disagreement or something, because there hasn't been that honesty. So if you were able to say, look, I'm really exhausted. Today's been really difficult. I've had loads of things on and I do want to talk to you about this, but I don't feel like today might be the day. So at least she's now understanding, I get it. I get where he's coming from and I get where he's at. So it's put her at ease because she's noticing something, and maybe she's not saying it to you that, hey, I noticed that you're not available today. Like, what's going on? But I also think when we sometimes get into relationships, sometimes we go through things that allow us to understand ourselves deeper. So this is like Jedi level now. So when we go deeper into an understanding, we transition into relationships. And the way that we once clicked, it's not always going to stay like that, because naturally we're here to grow, we're here to develop. And as we're growing and as we're developing, we keep evolving into different shapes, and we have to keep trying to fit our shapes together, because if we don't, we drift into different spaces.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. We can try and force, we have to stay together for the kids. We have to do this. We have to do this. We have to stay together because we have a mortgage together. We have to stay here. And we're trying to force something, but there's frustrations, there's annoyance, because we're not fitting in a way that once we did. And we keep thinking back, but it used to be like this. He used to do this. She used to do this. And we keep thinking about the things that once upon a time happened, but we're not there. We're here. And we need to try and either make these shapes work together and fit, or we need to think about, okay, how does life look separately? How does life look differently? Rather than trying to force something that doesn't work.
I think that feeling of stuck is actually really interesting. And you know, so I share a story in my previous, you know, in my relationships, where I spent 6 months in the Dominican Republic. I met, you know, a wonderful woman, Rose, and you know, she was a single mother. She still is a single mother, but she had her child living in that place with her ex-husband in that place. She couldn't be traveling the world. I knew for a fact I was going to only be there for 6 months. And you know, we spoke about it, and then we eventually ended up deciding to date anyway, right?
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting because we never felt stuck. We knew for a fact this was a wonderful experience, but it wasn't going to last. And at the end of the experience, she gave me this beautiful card on our last day together that said, "I'm so happy I rented you." And I said, "What do you mean rented me?" And she said, which is very eye-opening for me. She said, "You know the difference between when you buy a property and you know you're stuck with it for 20 years of mortgage, and then suddenly everything about that property appears to be wrong. You have to paint that wall, you have to correct this thing, you have to fix that, you have to do this. Or when you rent a property and you say, I'm here for 6 months, I might as well enjoy everything in it." And it hit me really hard because in my mind, I actually think there was never anything wrong with Rose. She says that there was never anything wrong with me.
Yeah.
But there is a lot wrong with me. I can guarantee you that. She just didn't think of them as real issues because she didn't feel stuck.
Yeah.
And I think what ends up happening in our relationships, and I think it's really important to not lie to ourselves about that, is that the more committed we become in a relationship, the more every tiny little thing annoys us, the more the pencil not being in the right place is not a question of this pencil is not in the right place. It's a question of this pencil is not going to be in the right place for the next 20 years of my life.
Yeah.
And that suddenly becomes unbearable.
Yeah.
Now, you know, this is so frequent and rarely ever discussed, that idea of what do you do about that? Do you fight about every little bit of it and make the remainder of the 20 years horrible? Or do you rent and say, what is good about this? What can I enjoy in this?
Yeah. And I think it's also coming back into the moment. I think we spoke about it on the episode that we did on my podcast, where we spoke about this stuckness. We can choose how we want to continue. Do we continue by saying, just forget it, I'm just going to ignore him and live in the same house, or I'm just going to ignore her, let her just carry on doing it? Or are we going to really sit down and connect? Are we going to sit down and connect and figure out how are we going to work together on this? Because this isn't working for both of us. Both of us are sitting here feeling very unhappy, feeling very frustrated. What is it? Is this what we signed up to? And if it was, like, is this what we want to continue with? Is this what we want our kids to see? Is this what we want to live the rest of our lives with? How can we change something here, adjust something here?
How do you unstick a stuck relationship other than going to a Dr. Lalitaa therapist?
I was going to say, just go, well, sit down. I think it's about going back into yourself and thinking, okay, what's stuck? What is it that's stuck? Is it that you're not listening to me? Is it that I'm not feeling seen here? So you go back to the foundations which you started off with, do I feel respected? Do I feel like I'm seen? Do I feel like you don't care? And then going deeper into that, what does care mean? What does showing respect mean? And where does that come from? Because I think we also need to break that down. So if you're saying to me that you don't care for me, is it that you're not caring for me because the way that my mom or the way that my dad used to care for me was that they used to buy me everything, so I expect you to buy me everything? Is that really care, or is that your conditioned way of what care means to you? So it's really going deep and understanding these roots of what is it that's going on for you, to understand how is it that we're communicating and if it fits and if it works.
That's such an interesting way of looking at it because, in reality, as I listen to you now, okay, I get it fully. But when I was in my younger years, I didn't at all, okay?
Yeah.
And most of us, as we're establishing this kind of like, ooh, another person, how do I deal with that other person? We don't think about those things, that maybe the request is not at all what's being said, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's also, do we have that level of depth when we first go into a relationship, or is it that we develop that depth when we feel like this isn't giving me what I need and I know that there's something here, but sometimes we stay with the person because we feel fear. We feel, how are we going to find someone else after? We may feel loneliness. We may feel like, I'm going to be all alone. I don't want to be by myself. I'd rather just stay here. So we just stay put, but we don't have that level of self-awareness because we haven't done the work. We haven't gone deeper into ourselves to make sense of, hang on, if I'm feeling lonely here, let me embrace this loneliness. Let me really try and become a master of this loneliness and understand where this is coming from, because then I can surely understand, rather than filling it with the void of this temporary sort of space that I have in this relationship. That's not giving you the true sort of value that you're looking for. But you may not know that until you hit that sort of brick wall and you feel stuck and you're like, this isn't working for me.
So this isn't working for me, then you're saying find out what it is exactly that's not working for you.
Yeah. So what is it that's not working? Like, say, for example, if there's two people and they are saying this relationship isn't working, and one person is saying he comes late every day, he doesn't text me where he is, he's not communicating via text, and he's saying, but she keeps asking me all these questions. She keeps asking me where I'm at, who I'm with, and it's just exhausting. So where do we start with that? Where do we start? We find out what is the problem. So the problem is, you're saying this is the problem, you're saying this is the problem. Let's go deeper. Let's go deeper to understand actually what is it that's happening here. So does she feel like she's not respected? That he is going out, he isn't letting her know where he's going. So she feels very disrespected. And she also feels like, hang on, but I'm also your partner, you should be telling me these things. So there's an expectation now that's coming up. And then she also might have a fear as well, which is, I don't know where you are. You might be with someone else. You might be doing this. So now there's a story that's being created. So as we're diving deeper, we're understanding what her journey is, but what's really going on. Because the problem is always just the surface, and we have to go deeper. It's like that iceberg. Yeah. We see the tip, but underneath the iceberg, there's layers and layers and layers. And on the other side, we have with him is like, but I'm exhausted. I've been at work all day and I haven't got enough energy to sit down and to speak with her. So I'd rather just not. I'd rather just stay out, go with my friends, have a good time, and then come back and deal with it. But then he's also feeling that he's not being understood, or he's not feeling that he's not getting the compassion that he needs, or the respect, because he might see that as respect.
I think you're spot on. That's like 50% of all problems in relationships.
Yeah. So how do they solve it? How do they solve that? Is it about really, before sitting together and trying to understand it, there's going to be the anger, the frustration, the layers and layers, all the unspoken words that they haven't said to one another. That's going to come out. But you need to find that essence of love within you to be like, hang on, this is the relationship that I want to be in. And if this is the relationship I want to be in and I want to make this work, how do I go back to my root of how do I connect with this person and let them know what's going on for me at a deeper level, to be held by them? So you're going past the frustration, you're going past the anger, speak about it, address it, understand it, but let's go deeper and deeper and deeper to the roots of what's going on. It's like, imagine a tree, and you see the tree, you see the fruits aren't there, and you don't then address and then just water the leaves. You might need to go to the roots and say, hang on, what's going on here? What's happening here? And see, are they being nurtured in the way that they need to? So we're getting the fruit that we need.
You know what I find really interesting, and again, it's my hyper-engineered approach to things.
I can see your mind ticking.
Yeah, because I have to admit to you, I think the one topic that's rarely ever discussed is that every time a relationship's not working, we talk about what are we going to do to make it work. And as an engineer, I would say, should we make it work?
But it doesn't always work. So even in the therapy space, it's not always, we will say to people, when they come in, we might be talking and discussing things, but that doesn't mean that it's here to make it work. It might be that actually what we do is it's not fitting. So we understand, actually, look, these pieces don't go together.
Correct.
And
right?
we keep trying to force these pieces, but actually it's not going to help you, and it's not going to help the situation that you're in right now.
Have you ever done that? Like, you got a couple and you said, you guys are toast.
I haven't said that. I don't, I wouldn't say that to anyone because I don't believe it's toast. I believe that there's lessons. I believe that there's wisdom. I believe that there's understanding in all of that. And it's not just understanding about the relationship, it's understanding in yourself. It's you going deeper into your roots to understand, hang on, what worked in this relationship. So next time you enter a relationship, you can understand more about yourself. That doesn't mean that that's going to be perfect because there's no such thing as perfect. Then you might think, actually, this isn't giving me what I need. I'm communicating to the person. They might be available in the way that I want, but there's something that's missing and I don't know what it is. But because you've understood and you may have mastered loneliness, you feel like, I'm okay, I'm going to say to this person, this isn't for me. And then you're off looking for and trying to seek another relationship that you feel might work. But it's not that it's going to happen and it's going to be perfect. No relationship is perfect. And I think we all need to understand that there is conflict, but there's healthy ways of dealing with conflict. It doesn't always have to be shouting or waiting until there's a pencil on the floor for us to have the argument and then not resolve what's going on. And going back to your point is they don't always have to be that you have to make it work, because sometimes it doesn't work, and it's about understanding how do you move forwards. And it might be that you might want to move forwards, but there's still so much anger, frustrations, and people don't want to talk to one another again. But there's also relationships where people end and there's real love there. There's love where they care for one another. They want the best for one another. Yeah.
I mean, I have a very, very specific friend in mind. I hope he's listening. What I'm, what I'm thinking, no, this is not going to work. The two parties have changed so much, became two very different individuals.
But why do you feel that you can see that and he can't see that?
He's madly in love. I don't know what's wrong with him.
But do you think he's madly in love, or that's what he's telling himself, that he's madly in love? Is he choosing to see yellow cars going past and not looking at all the other colors? Because in his head, he's holding on to something. I try to
tell him the whole the world is full of cars, right?
But he's refusing to look at. So there's a famous saying is, you can take the horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yes.
And in this situation, you can tell your friend, you're not in love, you're doing this, but it's up to him to make the choice when he is ready. You can show him.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. I mean, in a very interesting way, as I said, as an engineer, you may give me, I love to restore cars.
Yeah.
I get into the nitty gritties of making a car go back to brand new and then lose money on it.
Yeah.
Right. Very good at losing money. But I love it's literally my hobby. I love to do it.
Yeah.
But there are cars sometimes that you will look at and you'll go like, oh my God, I can picture how this will look like when it's perfectly restored. But then, you somehow have to tell yourself, but it's not restorable.
Yeah. But have you always been like that? Have you always had that view of this is not restorable? Or did you learn that through doing the more and more cars that you gained, the more and more cars that you worked on, you developed that way of, okay, I get this now and I understand this?
Yeah, I think definitely experience gives you a lot of confidence with your judgment. I mean, the idea of me losing money on them is actually part of classic cars. Classic cars, when you sell them, never make money. And in the past, I used to lie to myself and say, just keep them. Okay, who cares if you keep them, right? And when I was my little rich spoiled brat, but now I don't want to keep them, and I do sell them to a very lucky person that really enjoys them. But it is experience that tells you, look, you're rarely ever going to make money on a restored car. This is your hobby. This is like you going to play golf, which I don't understand why people play golf at all. But but some people enjoy that. So I enjoy doing this, and I also have to say, if you look at lots of experiences. We spoke about that on your podcast. My statistics say that 98% of all relationships end.
Yeah.
Okay. Not marriages, not long-term committed relationships, but, which hopefully will enjoy a slightly less appalling stat. They say one of every two Western marriages end. But relationships, right? And I think the thing is, maybe we should also tell people sometimes to look at a relationship and say, it was lovely. I mean, I learned so much. I enjoyed so much. I really love this about this person, but it's not restorable.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a real power with what you've just said. And I take it back to experience. Because with experience, there's two ways we can go. We can have the experience and we repeat the same pattern. We repeat the same pattern. We repeat the same pattern. And it's like, why is it that I keep getting people that are emotionally unavailable? Or why is it that I keep getting this? Why is it that and it's like, you're not looking at the pattern and understanding that. But the second side is you go through the experience, you stop, you gain clarity, you try and understand what happened in that relationship. And then now you have that wisdom from there. You have the teachings, you have the lessons to then move forward into the next space. But if you're not doing that, then what ends up happening is you'll continue to repeat the same pattern over and over again.
Yeah, which I think is really life's way of telling you, by the way, until you learn the lesson, you're going to have to
get it.
have to continue to go through the tests.
Yeah.
I think one of the most eye-opening experiences in my romantic life was when I became a monk. To change everything.
You became a monk?
I did 9 months, yeah.
Okay.
My own definition of monk, let's put it this way, right?
Okay.
I can't be in a monastery being told what to do. It's just, I'm too old for that.
Yeah.
But I did, have a vow of celibacy, and I changed my life allocation of hours and so on.
And you said you did that for 9 months?
Yeah, I did that. Wow. It was planned for 6, and then I decided 9 around the first month, and I stuck to it for 9 months. And I, going through that experience, I went on platonic dates, and it's I have to say it's the most eye-opening experience ever.
Yeah.
When you sort of like look at her and say, "Oh my God, she's so cute." And then say, but I'm not going to touch her for 9 months.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. So what was eye-opening about that for you?
Because once you give yourself that space,
yeah,
you make very different decisions. Almost every single time on the 4th date, which you never really wait until, I was like, oh, not right for me at all. Yeah. Wonderful in so many ways.
So what did you learn about yourself from that?
Now I go through the whole idea of love and romance very differently.
Yeah.
I almost flipped it upside down.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the typical approach of love and romance is you get into a relationship hoping to make it work unless it proves otherwise.
Yeah.
I now just flipped one tiny thing. I said, it's not going to work unless proven otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that tiny little thing meant a complete relief and objectivity in like, okay, take time, get to know someone, even go a step further, doesn't matter, it's okay. As long as you're open about the idea that, hey, look, we don't know that this is going to work yet. We don't know that we should put our lives fighting for it to work yet. When that becomes clear, it's clear, right? Until it becomes clear, might be part of the 98%.
But is this also, when you're talking, and what I'm hearing is self-awareness. You're aware. So you're thinking and you're aware of what's going on. So you're like, okay, this is what's happening. And sometimes through experience, we gain that self-awareness.
100%.
So
and in relationships, it's paramount importance.
Yeah.
To know who you are.
Yeah. But also, who we are changes because one person might go through something really big, the other person might not, or you might both go through something big and it changes you both in different ways. So it goes back to the point of we're constantly changing and evolving shapes. And as we're evolving, we also need to communicate with one another as we're evolving, because otherwise we always just believe that, but that's how we were when we first got together. That's how we were. And if you keep living in the past of that's how we were, it's like, but this is where you're at now. You can't keep thinking back to that's how it was, because this is where you are. And if there's parts of that you enjoyed, how do we bring parts forward if it's going to work? And if it's not, we're not just going to bang our heads against the wall and think, how is this going to work? How is this going to work? If it's not meant to be, we will also go through that as well. I think that's really important to have that.
That is really important. Okay, I have a question that you have the right to refuse.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. What is the love life of a couples therapist look like?
Oh, so so many people are really intrigued about this. They're like, so go on then. What do you know?
When you're in a relationship, do you sit him down and say, look, I've done the analysis, this is hopeless?
I think it's also about having someone who's on your level, isn't it? You want someone who's on your level who understands it. And it's when you're in therapy, you are fully focused. You're 100% there and you're available in the way that you are. When you're in life, yes, you have your awareness and you have your reflections, but are you there the way that you are with your clients? It's a very different experience. So sometimes people think, oh, you're asking these questions, but it's just a natural thing. It's like one of my one of my cousins, he works with roofs. So when we go places, he's like, look at the roof there and look at the roof. And I'm like,
I used to be like that.
Like I was like, I don't understand that. So I'm the same when it comes to psychology. It's integrated within me. And even at home, like I'll say things or things don't make sense and I might say things and I'm like, oh, and then people will say, stop doing psychology now. And I'm like, but it just comes natural to me. It's just a big part of me. So I think it's about finding someone who accepts you, finding someone who understands you. And if you do cross that boundary, they are also able to say, hey, look, I'm not ready to talk about this, or I'm not really comfortable about this. And you respecting that rather than thinking, oh no, but in therapy I can go deeper and deeper. Like, no, you also have to respect where the other person's at. So it's about understanding where they are, but they understanding you, but you being mindful as well that you're not the therapist at home, and you have to be mindful of that.
But things like, being able to look at their attachment style and go like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Do you tell them what their attachment style is?
Do I tell them?
Yeah. So lie down here for a minute.
Let's just take a seat and let's just talk about this. I think it's important that I respect where they're at and where their self-awareness is as well. And if they're not ready to hear something, it's not my place to also just impose and throw something at them that they might not be ready to hear. So sometimes you can ask the question, I've noticed something. Do you want to hear what I might have observed or what might be coming up? And if they're ready and if they want to hear, then yeah, that's fine. I'll share that. But that's also like with friends, with family. It's the same sort of situation. Is if I notice things, do I say it? And also I think there's this idea that just because you're a therapist, you're a psychologist, you work with people, you have your life figured out. You have everything going on. That was the
purpose of my question.
Yeah, so people think that, but no, that's not the case. Just because we are able to notice things and work and help and support people working through things doesn't mean that that's how we are at home, because we are also human beings. And this comes up time and time again. But you're a therapist, you should know better. And I'm like, but I'm not a therapist in real life. Like, I'm a therapist, but this is where my 100% focus is. Otherwise, I'm a human being. I make mistakes. I might say things that are inappropriate, but I take that accountability and I really work with that and understand it and try and make sense and have the same reflections as others. So I'm living and breathing what I preach to others.
Oh, interesting. So therapists break up too. Yeah. Their hearts break as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I was joking with a friend of mine who's a masseuse, saying that I should definitely, date a masseuse. And she said, I never massaged any of my boyfriends. I'm like, what? So, with all due respect, why do they date you? And she said, exactly.
Yeah. See, there's an assumption, isn't there? There's a huge assumption that people, it's like when people look at yourself and they're like, oh, engineer, this. But then we make assumptions based on what isn't really there. So it might be there, but it's a subconscious way that we're connecting with someone thinking, oh, they've got it all together, or they're perfect, or they're like, and it's like, we're not perfect. We haven't got it all together. But just like you said as well, when you're connecting with other professions, we have the same belief or the same but you're a solicitor, you should be this, or you're this profession, you should be organized. But that's our own belief. That's our own, we're going to put them up here and we're going to expect them to behave in this way. But that's not who they are. So it's going past the labels, which is what, when you asked me at the beginning, how do I introduce you? I was like, they're labels. They're labels of having a psychologist, having a therapist. There's so much more to people than having these labels.
But me as a happiness teacher, I actually am happy.
Yeah.
I think that's important, right? To practice what you preach in that way. You seem to keep going back to understanding oneself, not understanding the other.
Okay, that's interesting. Because I think in order to understand oneself, you then communicate that to the other, to then understand the other. Because is it, when there's two people in a relationship, and if you're constantly...
Not always in this modern new world, it could be 17, we don't know.
Very good point.
Yeah.
So say, for example, if we're focusing on the other person, and you're saying, right, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this, or you need to change this and you need to change this. But doesn't it take two to tango? So isn't it also about, there's not just two people, but there's however many people there are in this relationship, but we have to work on ourselves first. We are on this journey, we're here, but in order to then connect and communicate our needs, isn't it also about understanding what might be going on for ourselves? So it is, for me, the way I see it is that self-development to then be able to communicate outwards. So going in to then come out.
So going back to that, post we started the conversation with, I of course, I am not very supportive of social media negativity. So when I get negativity on social media, I sort of shut up completely.
Yeah.
But you know, responding to this, I simply said, well, there are good men too, right?
Yeah.
That not everyone is wrong, and I couldn't get into the point of saying, but the reason you don't see that is because of part of your conditioning, and
Yeah.
it might be very useful to actually go within to recognize that, yeah, even though maybe your father wasn't amazing, or you know, accordingly the men that you
Yeah.
dated were not amazing, that this is not the the truth at all,
Yeah.
that this cycle could be broken.
But isn't that a beautiful response? Isn't that a really beautiful response from our viewpoint? But from her viewpoint, if you respond back to her in that way, she might be like, oh, like, see, this is the problem, or this, because she's not ready to hear it, or she's not ready to understand that. So her way, it's like when we said people get stuck in that story that they keep telling themselves, like all men are like this, all men are like this, or all women are like this. And as a result, what ends up happening is you have that belief that's so strong. So someone comes and tries to pop that belief, and they're like, no, this is and then
Yeah.
you become the problem, because now you're the problem, because they're not ready to feel or to let go and to evolve from that belief that they may have.
Yeah, I find that quite interesting because, you know, in a very interesting way, we seem to always take the extremes. Like,
Yeah.
you know, on one side, we would hold the position that love and romance is never going to work. Every one of the opposite, polarity is going to be horrible in every possible way. We don't understand them. They're stupid in every way. Or we take the other, and we somehow ignore the example of that couple, friends of ours, that seem to be making it work.
Yeah.
Right? Which is sort of the or ignore the example of that short relationship we had at a point in time that seemed to work. We ignore that. And on the other hand, on the other extreme, what I find quite interesting is, again, remember when we were talking on your podcast about, I believe that doing the work is important, even if the objective is love and romance, which is love is a state of being. It doesn't require action or doing, but doing the work to find it, is normally, again, on the other extreme, completely ignored. I get quite a few of the romantics, men or women, but mostly on the feminine side, that will say, no, I'm just going to wait here, and then one day the door will be knocked down by a white horse, and a handsome man, and he's just going to show up. And I'm like, possible, but
where does that come
mathematically,
from?
yeah.
Where does that come from? It comes from their conditioning, or it comes from the beliefs that they actually feel. So they feel that is so true. So they are there waiting for this person to come along, because that's what they feel is their story. And that's not happening. So that's gonna lead them to feeling disappointment, feeling like the world is like doing this, looking at everyone else and thinking, look at everyone else is in relationships. What's wrong with me? And then they take that belief of life, because the story that they thought life was gonna bring them isn't the story that's happened for them.
And even more interestingly, I think they reject every other story.
Yeah.
And that's a very, it's very, it reinforces your point of view of look within, because I think that before this conversation, I thought, it is all workable. But what you're saying is sometimes the story that you're expecting, the story that you're insisting on, is not realistic. It's just not going to happen.
And that's why we have to go inwards. But sometimes we may not know that until, like you said, your friend, he is madly in love. And you can see from your own awareness, from your own experiences, that he's not madly in love, but that's what his view is in that point. But he's on his own journey. He has to learn himself. So he might eventually come out of that relationship thinking, this was not for me. And I can't believe I stayed in that relationship for this many years. But right now, that's the story he's holding on to, that I'm madly in love. This is the perfect person for me. This is an amazing life. But he has to get to that point where it no longer works, or something happens, and then he has to go within. And that's often what we see, like in the therapy space, is people get to a point where things aren't working, and that's when they work on themselves. And it's like, why don't people, before they feel like they need to get married, or before they enter a relationship, why don't they work or have sessions to try and just help them understand each other, or do things where they're really understanding one another, rather than going out or doing something that doesn't allow them to develop that real depth to one another?
Yeah, it's really quite an interesting side. Do you believe that Do you believe that conflict is a necessary part of a relationship? Is there any relationship without a conflict? I think about that. It's a two-level question. I think about that because I haven't made up my mind if AI boyfriends and girlfriends are a bad idea or a good idea.
Yeah.
Because maybe there is a way. I mean, there seems to be for humanity, there seems to be a path to the angel girlfriend, which
But
is
there
always
something there,
is
Mo?
always perfect.
Like, I know you're saying it's always perfect, but is there also something around energy management? So people, they're so quick. Like, if I want some food, Deliveroo. If I want to watch something, Netflix. If I want to do this, there's something out. Everything's really, really quick. So when it comes to a relationship, sitting down and talking, it's not something like that. It just happens like that. So is that also evolving, that this way of life that's so fast paced and we get things instantly? When there's a conflict, sometimes that's not an instant fix. Sometimes we have to sit down with one another, give each other time, no phones, no distractions, and just giving each other that real space and connection. That feels like hard work. So it's easier to go somewhere where there might be, where it's like you said, it's perfect, it's angel. It's like, this is life because I don't get this and I don't get this. But is that also partly to play into that idea of the fast-pacedness and the
think about it this way. The reason why we order in is because we either don't have the energy to cook or we don't know how to cook, right? And, I actually enjoy that more and more in my life as I got older. I really enjoy that polarity of the feminine and the masculine. I really enjoy that deep connection that is not centered around desire or, attraction, but actually desired around difference. Because, if we agreed, you and I, on everything, our conversations would be very boring, right?
Yeah.
And
life would be very much like that. But in conflict, things happen and we evolve
you
together.
feel alive, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. And I love the emotional roller coasters that a woman in my life would show. I love that. But I'm not everyone. I'm old. I've seen a lot. I've had a lot of experiences. And in an interesting way, I know exactly what I want. Exactly, like to the. It's if I share with you how engineered I am in the approach of analyzing what I truly want and what I don't. But not everyone's like that. And those who are not, then they're very lonely. They're struggling. They're finding that life is draining in many ways, and maybe they should just. Maybe it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. When you were talking and you were saying, oh, I've got this list, I'm going to challenge you in that, because having that specific list in your head based on your experiences and you've got this list, does that also, do you think, limit you? Because when you're meeting with someone, they may not have the tick list that you feel that you want.
I don't have a list of things to tick.
Okay.
I have a list of boundaries that will not be crossed.
Okay, so can you see this communication here? Yeah. I've just said to you, oh, do you have it? And you're like, no, it's not a tick list. So in my head, I'd be like, oh, Mo has a tick list and this. But I've just communicated that to you and asked you, oh, what's this? And you're like, no, it's a boundary. It's like this. That is like communication right there, isn't it? Yeah, there's the power of
I think
speaking.
it's actually a very interesting point when you really think about it, because, most of the time, even myself, when I was teaching this at, earlier stages, I would say, know exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I realized that more and more, the list you should have is know exactly what you won't compromise on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say, I'm looking for someone who's much taller than I am, very typical, feminine requirement is for the masculine to be more dominant or protective and so on. You could say that, or you could say, I don't want to feel that I'm with someone who's smaller than me. Okay? That's different, because smaller and bigger is not just physical. Okay?
Yeah.
And if you really dig deep into this, you start to understand what is driving you to want what you want. I want a passionate woman, not just passionate like sensually, but I want a woman that believes in what she believes in, and she's out there arguing for her point of view, believes in something, whatever that thing is. And I love that idea of, if I'm doing what I'm doing it full-heartedly, whatever that is, right? But that doesn't mean I'm not open to realizing that passion comes in many different ways than what I think it is. Okay. And you know, you start to realize that when you sort of narrow down what it is that you're looking for to specifically hair colors and characteristics and words and love languages and all of those complex things that we add, you're sort of killing the serendipity of life.
Yeah.
And if you take into account, and I say that, and I know I'm going to be battered for this. So why
I can
am I
hear
saying
your
it?
voice going slowly, quietly, head down.
Yeah, you know, if you accept the fact that 98% of all relationships will end, then you might as well allow serendipity to allow you to learn so that you get closer and closer and closer to the one that deserves to not end.
I wonder, the people that get offended with that stat and what you've just said, what might be going on for them? And what might be happening for them and what belief that they have? Because have they come from the belief that mom and dad, from their experiences, their mom and dad stayed together, they made things work? Are they coming from the belief that their dad may have left or their mom may have left and they're like, no matter what, you have to stay together? So can you see there might be something going on for that person? So when you've said, well, actually 98% of people, they don't stay in relationships, someone might get really frustrated by what you've just said. But it's also to understand where that frustration is coming from and why what you have said hasn't been sort of accepted. Instead, it's brought like this defense.
Absolutely.
So it's trying to understand that as well within oneself to try and make sense. What's going on there for you? And being curious with that.
For me, this is the reason why I never published that book. Okay. Because in that book, I have brutal honesty about the idea that, look, 98% of relationships will break, which gives you two things. One is to say, here and now, when you're in a relationship, feel it and live it fully, because it might actually end. It's like losing my wonderful son Ali. If sooner or later the ones you love are going to leave, you might as well enjoy their presence fully. That's number one. Number two is, there is that side of, the only way you can be part of the 2% is to put in work and a lot of learning. Right? And the only way you can put in work and learn is to actually be in relationships. It's not to read books. It's not to listen to me. Okay? It's to, you know, I tell my wonderful daughter, I say, Aya, go on a lot of dates. Right? Why? Because yes, dating is annoying sometimes, but dating is a skill. It's a skill for you to be able to sit in front of someone and say, oh, hati patati, but what's wrong with him? Right? And I think that idea of truth is truth, but can you take the positive side of that truth? And when, you know, and the book goes deeper into other things that are facts.
I think this book needs to be out in the world.
They're facts, but annoying. Okay, facts that are like, for example, 75% of people under the age 30 in the West, at least where the surveys were run, have hooked up with someone for a one-night stand or a relationship of, you know, friends with benefits and so on. And then when you tell people that 75%, that's a majority. That's a very large majority. And by the way, you must have been one of them unless you were part of the 25%. Why are you frowning upon it now? Okay, you know, the reality is, with gender diversity and the openness now for individual freedom, there are probably a gazillion love models. Okay, that are all agreed, all approved. Disney doesn't approve them. You know, Hollywood doesn't approve them.
Not yet.
Or it didn't in romantic comedies, right? The traditional model they sold was, this is all about, you know, one man, one woman forever. Right? And I think that, the reality is, when I tell people, but hey, just like you hooked up in your 20s, and now you're saying, no, I want my one partner for life and he has to commit or she has to commit or whatever, you know, you also are going to go through seasons in your life, and you're going to change in ways that basically will not only allow you, but almost force you to explore other models. Okay? Now, it seems to me that the biggest challenge around love and romance, and interestingly, because I was thinking this was going to be my concluding episode on the series, it seems that the challenge is that we're stuck in our own castles of beliefs. That unless I get A, B, and C, this is not love. Unless I get A, B, and C, it's not worth it. And if anyone tells me I can't get A, B, and C, I'll get upset. It's interesting.
It's really interesting. And that just opens up the doors again back into going back into self and really understanding self. But you can't understand self without research. So going on dates, really getting to know other people and understanding what's coming up for me, what's coming up for, and what am I noticing about myself? That's your research into yourself and understanding. So you can sit there and read all the books that you want and be like, yep, okay, this is my love language. This is my love style. This is this, this is this. But it's only until you actually start doing the research. It's like sitting, learning to, oh, this is how you drive. You drive by doing this. This is what you do with the gear stick. This is, but when you're on like a hill and that gear stick is like you've put it into one and you're ready to go and you're just like, oh no, I'm not on, the biting point is wrong. And this, you're experiencing it very differently to how you're reading something.
Absolutely.
And that experience is showing up very differently. So it's the same in relationships. When you're in a relationship and there's conflict and inside your nervous system has shut down, because that's what used to happen as a child. Your nervous system has shut down and they're like, well, why are you not answering me? What's going on for you? And you're not able to say there's nothing wrong, or you don't have the awareness that my body is actually shutting down right now because this is what used to happen. And when there was fights, there was someone that would get hurt. So when you're doing this now, my brain is going into fight, flight, or freeze mode because I'm feeling like something's going to happen. But that's something that we have to relearn. We have to relearn how to be in relationships by understanding and going to the past to then move forwards.
I think this is really a very profound statement that there is such a joy in finding love. Such a joy in finding someone, but there is also pain involved. Okay, there is the pain of getting out of your shyness or getting to connect to a new person or putting in the effort to build it after it broke down last time, or the fear of the pain of loss. Okay, and I think for many, this whole, it just needs to be one and it has to be forever and can't they take this anymore and, don't break my heart and tell me it's not going to be the next time. It's just putting people in a place where they're actually not going out to do the experiences that they need to develop the skills to get
and there's
that one.
two things there. Two things that come up in my mind: safety and trust. And it's self-trust. So the safety side is, do I feel safe with this person to speak out how I'm feeling? Or does this person not make me feel safe? And what is that about? Is it because I worry that if I tell them what's really on my mind, they're going to leave and they're going to think, you're too much, I can't deal with this, I'm out of here. So that's about the safety that you might have with the person. But the other thing is self-trust, that if the person does walk away, I know I'll be okay. I know I will figure it out and I will work through this and I will be okay. But it's that self-trust that you may not have, or that you might not even have fallen into because you haven't allowed that to happen to you. You haven't allowed someone to walk away from your life because you've fallen into give them everything, people please, fall into these ways of achieving whatever they might want, because then they stay here. But then inside you're feeling resentful, you're feeling frustration because they're not showing up in the way that you want them to, but you're not telling them how to. So this is like a two-way, a double-edged sword. But the two things there is self-trust and it's about safety.
I think this brings me to, I think one of my top teachers on this, believe it or not, is my business manager and almost brother, who we started this podcast together, Munir. And Munir's top value in relationships is vulnerability. He basically says, look, as long as you say what you feel openly at the moment you feel it, whenever you feel it, kindly, okay, you cannot be blamed, and you will do the best that you can for to give the relationship, whatever it is, a chance. And it's quite interesting. So it's quite eye-opening that even in times when I was going through seasons when I was offering wasn't that, that the woman I go out on a date with would want. When I was vulnerable enough to say, hey, by the way, it's our first date. I just want you to know what you're getting yourself into. I am at this stage. I want to do this, and then I want to do that. And I travel this way. I'm not available that way. Most of the time, they would go like, interesting, I never thought of that. That might actually be interesting, right? Oh, and by the way, now that you said it this way, I realized that I am this and I am that, and right? And that kind of open communication is quite interesting in many, deep in the Islamic religion, which appears to be very restrictive. It basically says this is what you need. You need to have transparency and agreement. You need to sort of sit with the one that you're starting to have a relationship with and just tell them, hey, by the way, I'm not going to be able to spend every evening with you.
Yeah.
Probably in my case, I'm traveling 220 days of the year, right?
Yeah.
240 sometimes. And so if that is told up front,
Yeah.
then that safety is
Yeah.
established already, because there was no trickery in the game. And I find that quite eye-opening, that most people will say, no, I'd rather keep them,
Yeah.
even though I know it's going to break in the end because they don't get what they need,
Yeah.
than tell them up front.
Yeah. Yeah. And doesn't that come back down to fear? Fear of not feeling good enough because they feel like the other person's going to leave them, or that I don't want to sit in loneliness because I don't want to be alone. And what about if I can't find someone else? So I'd rather just have this, even if it's crumbs, even if it's like a few pieces of what I feel I want to have, I'm happy to have that. But that's not what they want really deep down. But you've said something really powerful about vulnerability. And I think sometimes we think being vulnerable is sharing everything and everything that's going on. And the word vulnerability is like, be vulnerable, but people like, oh, like, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want that. But being vulnerable isn't about you sharing like everything and anything. It's about you sharing with the other person what's going on for you, what's happening for you, how are you feeling, and why is it that we don't want to share these feelings with someone that we're with in order to develop and to go deeper in that relationship. And if we're struggling to share how we feel, what's going on for us? Is it that we've just, again, what is it that's happening for us? Do we struggle because we're worried about what the other person's going to think? Do we struggle because we think that our emotions are too big, we're too much? What are people going to think about us? All these things can just limit us and just hold us back from showing up as we want to show up and be loved in the way that we want to be loved.
Is there a way to just simply chill? Honestly, I mean,
breathe, connect.
I keep thinking about that
Yeah.
quite a lot, because once again, we've been talking about love and romance, I think 7 episodes now, or 6 or whatever. And when something is so complex, an engineer's mind like myself probably says there must be like a circuit breaker somewhere that can fix the whole thing, that the whole system is connected to. All of those complexities must belong to one system at the end of the day. And my answer sometimes is just chill. Honestly.
But isn't that also the responsibility of each and every one of us? Like, say, for example, I'm annoyed because someone's done something and I'm really annoyed now. And I'm just like, rah, rah, rah. I'm not regulating my emotions. I haven't given myself that space to just stop and think about what's going on for me. Instead, I'm reacting rather than responding. And that's because my bottle might be very full right now. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm at work, I'm this. And there's one little thing that's happened. You didn't shut the windows, and that's it. You then react rather than respond. So isn't it down as a responsibility to try and understand, hang on a minute, I know I'm very I'm very sort of stressed out at the minute, I'm all of these different things, I'm aware of that. But it's also saying, even if you do, because we are imperfect, we are humans, and if we do end up reacting in a way, we can say, look, I'm really sorry about that. That was because of this is what happened. And I'm noticing that this is what happened. And I didn't mean to lash out in that way, but this is what came up for me. So doesn't this also go back into self-awareness, but the vulnerability of going to someone and saying, this is what happened to me and this is what went on?
100%. It's so much easier, so much sweeter.
We say it's easier, but everyone avoids it and just doesn't say anything because they think that's easier, but that's not easier.
I don't understand. I mean, in my mind, I actually think there is a higher level than that. Chilling in my mind is look, it's gonna work if it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going with the flow and the rhythm, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to work if it's supposed to work. I mean, I told you my current view of life is that, look, if someone is worthy of the experiment, let's try, right? But let's not force it. Let's not squeeze it into a shape that it doesn't fit within. If it's supposed to work, it's going to work. So chill. Right? Don't fight it, like a little bit like that rental agreement. It is what it is.
But let's see
if I enjoy that kind of life. And on the other side, by the way, chill if it breaks, because that basically means, hey, you can rent another place. It's fine. And I don't know where that fear of I'm not going to find another one. Maybe I'm not going to find another one that meets my exact, very, very detailed specification. You're not, this one isn't either, because as evident by the proof that it broke.
Yeah. That's where you're at right now. If someone came to you and said, just chill, when you were like, I don't know, whenever you were, when you first started dating your ex-partner, if someone said, just chill, how do you think you would have taken that?
Oh, they'll be spanked.
Yeah, so I think it's also about where people are at. So you and your friend, for instance, you're telling
He's
him
not chilling.
you're not in love,
Yeah.
you're not chilling, but he doesn't know how to because he hasn't been through them experiences where he's gone inwards.
I think honestly, I don't remember which country is that, but there is a country that has like a fixed date marriage,
Oh,
where basically they say, look, this marriage agreement is between us until, November 2023, and then we will renew it in November
Yeah.
2023. I find that to be so profound. I think love should be a 1 day long agreement.
yeah.
And then every morning you wake up the next morning and you look at her and she looks at him, or, if you're same sex, that's also the same. You look at each other and you go like, do I want to spend another day with you?
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Do I want to spend another day with you is the summary of all love and romance.
I wonder how many comments you'll get for saying that. I wonder how many people
Negative
will
again,
react.
please.
I wonder how many people will
Please.
react because of where they are at. And I think that's where it's also really important to say that everyone's entitled to their opinion. Everyone's entitled to wherever they might be at in their journey. That's where they're at. And that's where your viewpoint is right now. And someone else who doesn't see that or thinks that, why are you even saying that? They need to also just take a moment to just hang on. What is it that's coming up for me when this person is saying this? Is it because we're not used to someone saying this? Is it because it's very new language about love and romance that we haven't understood or that we're hearing for the first time? And it just feels very overwhelming. And it's a fear maybe it's tapping into as well.
Okay, let's edit this out.
No. We keep it in. Let's see what happens. Let's do this as our own research and see how many comments we get.
The truth is, if you wake up in the morning and you feel, I don't want to spend another day with this person, you have one of three choices. One is to leave. The other is to work on finding a way to make you want to spend another day with them, or to live like a vegetable for the rest of your life, unhappy and miserable.
Yeah.
So
what are you going to choose? What are you going to choose?
I hope you don't choose the vegetable. That's all I'm asking. Okay? I'm telling people, either wake up and say, hey, I woke up today and I felt I don't want to spend another day with you. Do you want us to walk different ways, or do you want us to make it work?
Yeah. And isn't that also about being honesty, like the honesty side of it that comes in? So if you're noticing that, for example, you may like something doesn't feel right in the relationship, isn't it, rather than it building up and you drifting away and sort of like spending time, not coming back home and other things, is it also you having the sort of like conversation with yourself to be honest with yourself, but also to be honest with the other person? Because isn't that also about letting them know that, look, I don't feel like I'm getting what I need in this relationship, and I'm noticing that I don't really want to spend time here, and I know that might hurt your feelings, but I want to be honest with you about what's going on. Isn't that you really owning up and really respecting the other person and letting them know where you're at?
And it's all about the way you say it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think if you say it with the intention of hurting or insulting or saying, oh, you're a piece of and I don't want to be with you.
Yeah.
Or if you're saying it in from the point of view of like, I love the story of two of us.
Yeah.
Why do I not feel the same way anymore?
Yeah.
I've noticed that my feeling is changing. I don't want it to change. Can we discuss this? And that's a very beautiful place to come from.
The other person might not agree and they'll be like, what do you mean? And the other emotions might come up, but you have to also allow space to sit with them emotions and let them adjust, because for them, they might have thought the sky was blue and you're saying, no, the sky is pink. And they're like, what? Like, how did I not know this? So they are also going to be going through their own journey. It's being patient and allowing space, and you might want to be there for them, but they might say, I don't want you to be here right now. So it's also respecting where the other person's at. But at the same time, you can't just hold on to someone, because you're clipping their wings and you're clipping your own. You're not allowing yourselves to flow in the way that you need to flow, because you feel like, no, but we should be here. But what if we do split? What are people going to think? What about this? And and we're so focused on other things, and we're not coming back to the essence of the relationship, the essence of why you're together and the values that you have together. So come back to that to try and understand, and also to like really try and make sense of what is it that's going on, what love means to both of you, and showing up for one another in that way, if that's together or if that's separately.
So, Lalita, I'm going to give you the very last word of this series, but before I
Yes.
do that, I'll just ask the audience a couple of questions. So, one thing is that if you're still here,
Yeah.
that means you either like this or you're asleep. So, if you're asleep, that doesn't matter. If you're like this, do what it needs, what it takes, please, to continue to grow this. So, like it. If you're on your podcast player, give it a 5 stars, please. Put in a nice comment. Tell your friends about it. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe and click the whatever little bell thing, and and maybe share it with your friends. If you're not on YouTube, why are you not on YouTube? It's it's actually a really nice video setup here. The other thing is, send me a message if you can. I'm only now following my messages on Instagram, because I was thinking of building one episode about my findings on finding love. But I have to say, I am worried that you guys are not going to like them. So if you want me to prepare one episode on finding love, let me know that. And Lalita, so this has been a very long series on about love and romance. You're the very last word, if you were to give one advice.
I think it's what we've been saying throughout the whole episode is if something doesn't feel right for you, don't just go along with it just for the sake of it. Don't just go along with it because you feel that's what's needed. It's really delve into yourself to try and understand what is it that's going on for me. And if you're struggling to do it alone, there's people out there, there's things that you can do to try and just understand your patterns of behavior, because that's what ultimately we're here to do, is understand ourselves, to grow, to develop. And if that's with one person for the rest of your life, if that's with several people, that's okay, but it's you that needs to accept that.
It's you. I agree, it is you. Your next book is coming out in
next May.
Next
so
May.
It's called, it's all about high functioning anxiety. So it's a really interesting topic and one that's dear to my heart. And I'm really looking forward to sharing that with the world.
Yeah, so you're coming back for that.
Yes.
But until then, I'm really, really grateful that we finally
I'm really
did this in
grateful.
person, not
Yes.
on Zoom. It's
Yes.
always wonderful to spend time with you, and thank you so much for your
Likewise.
time.
Thank you.
For all of you listening, yeah, I think I'll take a different mini series next time. I think we've covered this enough. I know for a fact that we'll come back to listen to more about love and romance. Do go back to Robert Glover's episode from season 2, I think, who spoke about No More Mr. Nice Guy. I think this was one very important episode for good men to learn to become better, even though I know, once again, that it will upset a lot of people. It is a very contested and very heated topic because of how we each view the definition of what real love, real relationships are and how they could be. But it seems to me, with my aging mathematical mind, that the odds of finding that perfect relationship are not really that high, and that the odds of you being happy when you find it are almost zero. So you might as well do what Lalita has been talking about all day today, to dive deep within you, within your own self, to understand where the conditioning is coming from. Why is it that you believe certain things? Why is it that you refuse other things? And hopefully, when you put it all together, you might be able to find a way to live and love, not being governed by your own conditioning, but really governed by what the odds of loving what you have are. Yeah, that's my summary of a long series. I hope you enjoyed this, and take a little bit of time to reflect on it. Slow down, because there is always value, and there's always a little bit of time to slow down. I love you all for listening, and I will see you on a more serious topic next time.